Hello everyone, welcome to the third video in the EMV series. In this video, we will cover about commands and transaction flow. In commands, we will understand what does a command actually mean, what are the commands that get exchanged between terminal and ICC, and we will also look into the EMV transaction flow, the various steps and the commands that get used in these steps. Before I jump into the video, I want to mention that the flow I have published is for an EMV chip contact transaction. Terminal is also referred to as an interface device, IFD, or CAD, that is card acceptance device. I'm just mentioning it here because when you read EMV books, these words get used. So let's look at what does a command actually mean. I mentioned in the first EMV video that ICC, that is a chip itself, is a passive device. It does not have power of its own. So when the chip gets actually dipped inside the terminal, the ICC, that is the chip, gets powered. So when the chip actually gets activated in a terminal, a command is sent by the terminal to initiate a particular action. The action can be extracting the contents stored in the files of the chip, or to modify them, or to generate a cryptogram or verify a pin. So command is in essence a message that the terminal actually initiates to the chip to do various actions. The standard set of commands is where the terminal actually initiates to perform a particular transaction. As I mentioned, it could be to read the application data, or to generate, verify cryptograms, or generate and verify pins. The second variant of commands is called as post issuance commands, where the issuers can update the data that is present on the chip. So we know that in a Magstripe card, once the card is issued, the data is not updatable by the issuer. Whereas in case of an EMV card, the issuer has the option to update the data on the chip post issuance. That is, once the card is issued to the customer, the issuer later can update the data when a transaction comes to the issuer through the terminal. These are called post issuance commands. Now let's look at the commands that are used in a EMV transaction flow. I have split the commands into three categories. The first one is generic commands, which is used to select a particular application and read the data. That's a select and the read record command. The second one is the commands that get used during a transaction. All that you see there: get data, get processing options, generate application cryptogram, external and internal authenticate, get challenge, verify a particular pin. So all these commands get used during a particular transaction. When we look into the EMV transaction flow, I have mentioned the commands that get used. So we will be able to relate what is the purpose of each command. The next set of commands are post issuance commands. As I mentioned earlier, these are commands that get issued by the issuer post the issuance of card to the customer. So whenever a customer tries to use that particular card and the issuer wants to update something on the chip, then these commands are issued as a part of authorization response. Let's take an example so that we understand this better. So assume I am the legitimate owner of a particular card. I lose my card. Then I call the bank and say that my card is lost. So the person who stole the card then tries to use the card. So when he uses the card, the bank can remotely execute a command saying card block, which blocks all the applications and the card itself. So in this way, the issuer has the capability to remotely block cards, or remotely block applications, or change the offline pin that is present on the card itself. This is one of the biggest advantage of EMV cards, where post issuance the issuers can send scripts or commands to the terminal to be executed on the chip. Now let's look into the transaction flow. So these are the various steps that are involved in an EMV transaction flow. So the first one is setting up the communication rhythm. So once the card is dipped into the terminal, then both of them handshake and set up a communication rhythm. The next one is the application selection, that is to select which product is going to be used for further in the transaction. Then initiating the application process itself. So this first three steps determine which product to be used. The next three sets is where we authenticate the card, that is in the offline data authentication. We also see if there are any processing restrictions, and then we will do the cardholder verification. So the next three steps: offline data authentication, processing restrictions, cardholder verification, do the card authentication and the cardholder authentication. The next three steps are terminal risk management, terminal and card action analysis, and post online transaction processing. This is where the transaction is actually performed and the risks are evaluated, and the transaction may be sent online to the issuer for further processing. So now let's look each of these steps in detail. The first step is setting up communication rhythm. So what happens in a communication rhythm setup? When the card is inserted into a particular terminal, the terminal powers the card, and the card will respond to the terminal with an ATR. ATR is nothing but answer to reset. What this contains is the transmission techniques. I mean, there are protocols called t is equal to 0 and t equal to 1, and the clock rates and the current, etc., that is to be passed. So all the handshake happens between the terminal and the card. The next step is application selection. In the application selection, first the terminal reads the DDF file from the chip. I mentioned what is a DDF file in the previous video. The command that is used to read the DDF file is a select command. Once the terminal reads the DDF file, it starts to read all the applications that is present on the chip. This is done using a command called read record. For every read that is performed from the chip, the terminal checks if that particular application is supported by the terminal. Let's take an example. The terminal, say, accepts only Visa and MasterCard, but the chip possesses Visa and a Discover application. So when the terminal reads that the chip has a Discover application, it would discard that particular application because the terminal does not support it. This is all done using the AIDs. After reading through all the applications that are present on the chip, the terminal finally builds a candidate list of all the applications that are supported by the terminal and the chip. So once all the applications that are finalized, the terminal can do the following things. The terminal can choose the first application in the candidate list and proceed with the transaction, or the terminal can provide a list for customer selection so that the customer can select which application to choose, or there is something called as an application priority indicator that is present in each application. So this is a tag, a data element for each application. So based on the application priority indicator, the terminal can choose the application with the highest priority as well. So finally, in this particular step, the application, that is the product to be used for proceeding with the transaction, is finalized. Once the application, that is the product with which the transaction has to be proceeded, is finalized, then the next step is initiate application process. This step marks the beginning of a new transaction. The command that is used for this particular step is called get processing options, which is initiated by the terminal. As a part of this step, the terminal passes certain data elements that is requested by the chip. So why does chip require data from the terminal? This is because the chip requires to decide if it has to proceed with the transaction on that particular terminal. So the data elements that are required by the chip from the terminal is called PDOL. That's called processing data object list. The chip tells the terminal in the previous steps what data element it requires. So in this particular command, get processing options, the terminal passes it. So once the chip gets this data as a part of get processing options, the chip decides if it has to proceed further with the transaction. If the chip decides further to proceed the transaction, then it provides something called as application interchange profile, and it also provides the application file details to the terminal to further proceed with the transaction. There can be scenarios where the chip does not want the transaction to proceed further. Let's take an example. Let's say the terminal type is unattended, that is, no, it is not being monitored by a person. The terminal type is passed from the terminal to the chip. Then the chip can outright reject that particular transaction, that is, terminate the transaction, and not proceed further. I'm introducing two important terminologies here called as application interchange profile and application file locator. The application interchange profile is more of information that tells if SDA, DDA or CDA is being allowed or not. So we'll understand what are they in the next slide. But the chip provides all of this information to the application. The next step is to authenticate if the card is valid. So this is called offline data authentication. There are three major methods with which the terminal authenticates if the card is valid. The first one is static data authentication, where certain static signed data is put on the chip by the issuer, which gets validated by the terminal. In all of these three techniques, it involves asymmetric key cryptography. I'm not going into the technical details of what happens in SDA, DDA, and CDA, but at a broad level, static data authentication is a static data that is put on the chip that gets validated by the terminal. Whereas in a dynamic data authentication, the card dynamically generates a signed data that gets validated by the terminal. This is more secure than that of static data authentication. Whereas a combined DDA, it is very similar to how DDA is, but it also generates a cryptogram. The next step is processing restrictions, where the terminal mandatorily checks for application specifics. That is, checks if the application version number is valid and supported, checks if the application is actually effective and it has not reached the expiry date, and importantly, it checks something called as application usage control. So, what is application usage control? This is a particular feature where the issuer can restrict the country and the services that the chip can be used for. For example, the issuer can set that this particular chip card can be used only for domestic purpose or international transactions as well, or it is valid only for ATMs or for other terminals. So AUC, that is application usage control, gives control to the issuer to allow what type of transactions can be performed or not. The next step is cardholder verification, where we verify if the cardholder is a valid cardholder, legitimate cardholder for performing the transaction. There are three modes for performing a transaction. The first one is offline PIN, where the terminal requests the chip to verify if the PIN is valid. The second one is an online PIN, where the terminal captures the PIN and passes it on to the issuer for validation. The third one is a standard signature verification, where the merchant is requested to verify the signature. The chip maintains something called as a CVM list, which allows the issuer to provide different CVM methods for various types of transactions. You can assume this is something like multiple records, where for different type of transaction types like cash, purchase, etc., and based on the transaction amount, the CVM method can be set. So we can always set a rule saying that for ATM cash transactions, request a PIN, or do not request a PIN, or do an offline PIN verification for a transaction amount that is less than 100. There could be different types of CVM methods for different transaction types and different transaction amounts. The terminal parses through the CVM list one by one and matches with the appropriate CVM method and then executes it. The next step is terminal risk management. We all know that EMV have the capability to perform a transaction offline, but offline transactions come with their own risk where the issuer is not aware of that particular transaction. So in this particular step, the terminal does a risk assessment and ensures all the riskier transactions are forced online to the issuer real time, and then the issuer decides on these transactions. There are two major techniques for risk management. First one is called floor limit, where the terminal maintains a floor limit and any transaction that is more than this floor limit is forced online to the issuer. There can be cases where the merchant can split a high value transaction into two or more transactions. So there is a feature where the terminal actually sums up the transaction of the previous transaction and the current transaction done by the cardholder and checks if the total is more than the floor limit, and even then it forces the transaction online. So the first method is based on the transaction amount, and the second method is velocity limits. The terminal checks the number of consecutive offline transactions that have been performed by the cardholder. So let's say if the cardholder continuously performs 5 transactions offline and the issuer decides I don't want to allow more than 5 consecutive offline transactions, then the sixth transaction should be forced online. So this method can be used. The way it is performed is last online ATC field contains when the transaction went online and it takes the current transactions ATC. It finds out the difference and checks with the consecutive offline limit and forces the transaction to go online. So after all the previous steps, then the terminal finally takes a decision if the transaction can be approved offline itself, or it has to be declined offline, or the transaction has to be forced to go online. This is done using a field called IAC and TAC, that is Issuer Action Code and Terminal Action Code. So these two fields decide how to proceed further. If the decision is to approve offline, the terminal requests the chip by executing a command called generate application cryptogram, and the chip returns a transaction certificate. If the decision was to go online, then the terminal requests the chip to generate an application cryptogram. This is called as an ARQC, and this ARQC is passed on to the issuer to validate. If for some reason the transaction is to be declined offline, then the terminal requests the chip to generate an AAC and the transaction is declined offline. So for transactions which have been sent online to the issuer for decisioning, the issuer responds with the transaction decision and also sends something called as an ARPC. So this particular data element is sent to the chip for validation using a command called external authenticate. The issuers can also send the post issuance commands, which we saw in one of the first slides. The terminal passes these post issuance commands to the chip for execution, which marks the completion of the entire transaction. I wanted to mention that the methods that I have mentioned and the process is what is used majorly across various issuers. Please do read the EMV book 3 and book 4 for all the different options that are provided in the steps. Thanks again. Do like and subscribe if you learned something new from it, and I would love to hear your comments as well. Thank you.